Sweet. All right. We're up and running. So just forgive me a second, just going through and trying to update trying to, and let's see, hopefully this comes across. Trying to do this from behind, like working through a mirror. Let's see if I can get that to a full screen. So, like we said, like you saw in the post, today's topic is going to be on kind of the 24-hour cycle. All right, and just kind of how our natural biological schedule goes beyond just our sleep patterns. This is the main focus of this is just going to be an image that I picked up. I picked up a while back. I think it was last summer. Okay, and I can't take credit for it. I think I found it from Coach Vern Gambetta, and not sure where he may have found it from. So apologies for not being able to give full credit, but I'm certainly not taking credit for it. So let me just zoom in right here, just a little bit. Probably too much. All right. So ever since I've found this, it's definitely been an interesting kind of I don't want to say case study, but resource to reflect on. And yeah, there we go. We got it up and going. So it's definitely been a great resource for me, not just to think about my own personal training, but also those of our athletes, and how our regular patterns kind of are affected by changes in our routine. So I understand apologize that the visual's not as clear, but I'll certainly try and point and click and help through it. So a little bit. So yeah, I mean, obviously, most of us are all of us, I'm sure, are familiar with kind of the general term of the circadian rhythm, and how our sleep patterns and our body just kind of adapts into that. Certain concepts and theories that I knew about, and this kind of highlights that a little bit more, is how it's not just our sleep and our energy patterns, but so many other things in terms of our digestive system, even our biomechanical skills can kind of fluctuate throughout the day based on the time of day and our amount of sleep and everything. So we'll just kind of start kind of at a typical day, and the big message I want to get across here is that these things are not down to a specific minute and second. So it's not like if something says at 12 o'clock that you have to set your watch or anything like that. Obviously, if you're in your particular environment is going to adjust. So say, for example, if you have a job that requires early morning shifts, you're up at 3 o'clock or something like that, your clock will kind of adjust to your timing and your schedule. But at the same time, and probably the bigger picture here is just how consistency will help your body get into that rhythm and allow you to maximize those moments and these time periods. So basically, starting here, if this is 12 noon, just as you're looking at 12 noon, 12 midnight, as you're going through it, somewhere around 4:30, or kind of that last REM cycle right before you wake up is where, as they say, it has you have the lowest body temperature. You think about it, that's probably a time to where if you've had that full, or if you're getting that full 8-hour sleep cycle, that that your heart rate's going to be low, and you're kind of hitting that deepest sleep period, right? And then of course, this is just assuming kind of 6 o'clock as a wake up window, and then somewhere around 6:45 or 45 minutes around that or after that is your sharpest rise in blood pressure. It's not your highest blood pressure, but your sharpest rise. So if you think about it, you're waking up 45 minutes into it, your body's starting to wake up, and you're starting to get a little more active, walking the dog, going on a morning run, whatever it is. That's probably where that's coming from. All right, and then from there, about an hour and a half into it, your melatonin secretion is going to stop. So most of us are familiar. Melatonin is um, the one piece or one chemical that's really going to put us into that sleep mode. Sorry, I'm blanking on the scientific terms here, um, but that's where it's going to cease, and kind of help us adjust into that daylight activity, which is a lot of times why they encourage you to get exposed to natural daylight as soon as possible after you wake up. Right, and then from there, typically 2.5 hours into it, or according to this clock, 8:30 is when you might be having a bowel movement. So, uh, especially once you're kind of in the middle of your routine, maybe in your competitive schedule, you might notice that as you're getting your workout periods at the same time, whether it's weights and team conditioning, etc., that even your biological movements will start to get on schedule as well. So um, somewhere around 3 hours after wake up, highest testosterone secretion, or um, so. Again, most of the time we've probably had our first feeding, our first meal around this period, and then around 10 o'clock or 4 hours after wake up is our highest alertness. And this is something that you might find if you're a college student, you're sitting in class, you always find that it's not your 8 a.m., it's not your 9:10, it's that 10:20 or so class that you're really astute and locked into. Um, I certainly, especially reflecting back on my academics, that was definitely a similar pattern for me as well. And then obviously 12 noon, once we get into the afternoon, shortly after the midday break or lunch period, uh, is when it's assumed that we have our best coordination somewhere around 2:30, around 3:30. We can tend to have our fastest reaction time, and then at 5 o'clock, greatest cardiovascular efficiency and muscle strength. So this is especially critical, and kind of an important note for for adjusting or strategizing your actual workouts. You might find that, well, yeah, I prefer to work out in the morning just to get it over with, but I'm not as strong as what I usually am or might be later in the day. And this could be I'm not saying this is finite by any means, but could definitely play a role in it. Then once we get into the evening, okay, around 8:30 is when it's assumed that we have our highest blood pressure. Around 7 o'clock is when we have our highest body temperature. Okay, and just going back, remember we said early in the morning you have your sharpest rise, but it's not necessarily the peak of your blood pressure. So, and according to this model, around 6:30 is when you hit that peak. Uh, Highest body temperature, and then around 9 o'clock is when that melatonin secretion is going to begin and start that evening routine, or start kind of fading into that sleep mode. And again, for those of you that have been following us, those athletes that we've been working with, we talk about our nighttime routines, and we typically say starting an hour before you go to bed, right, is ideal. It's not required, but definitely ideal. Then you can see that if you start that around 9 o'clock, you're just helping your body. That routine is just creating that natural flow into that period, and prepping for say a 10 or 10:30 lights out, right? And then about 10:30 is when it's assumed that might have bowel movements kind of suppressed, right? So obviously, just to avoid having the late night late night trips to the bathroom. And then somewhere around 2 o'clock or 2 a.m. is when you have the deepest sleep, right? Um, so again, this is just a great model that if you follow it and understand it, or if you look into it and try and adapt it to your situation, that you might see some similar patterns there, right? That workouts in the morning versus the afternoon, you have a different feel for it, and this is kind of in line with um, aging it a little bit. But 10 years ago, one of the first camps that I had the opportunity to attend at the Olympic Training Center, and we sat down with their sports scientists, and they shared something very similar to this in the term that, or in the sense that in the morning you would want to do more of your from a team training perspective. The morning might be better for skill assessment or skill development because the mental aspect is a bit more in tune or intact, or heightened, I should say, probably a better term. Whereas the afternoon might be better for more of your physical stuff. So actually going out and scrimmaging, any type of physical or intensity type of work. So, a lot of our work, a lot of my work being with rugby, we might do more of our scrimmaging, contact work, whatnot in the afternoon, because the skills are kind of taking over. Whereas the morning might be better for, say, installing a new defensive structure, or a new attacking system, or teaching a new skill. Maybe it's body position and contact, or if it's I don't know, throwing myself out there a little bit. If it's basketball, maybe a new crossover step, or working with your offhand, working with your non-dominant hand might be better reserved for the morning versus the afternoon. So I know, again, if we're kind of taking this outside of the sports environment a little bit, you might think about it in the professional sense as well, in the sense that you might find more creative work uh, just kind of coming more naturally in the morning, whereas more let's just say minute work, or just kind of manual work. Maybe it's data entry, or phone calls or something like that. You might find that just becomes more easier, more natural in the afternoon hours. So um, so that's pretty much it. Like I said, I saw this. I think I came across this last year, but was reminded of it, had a conversation with an athlete last week that just brought this back to my attention, and wanted to kind of share it with everyone. Again, the big thing to take away is not that you have to follow the schedule. It's not saying that, if you don't have these certain activities or events at certain times, that something's wrong, right? It's just that your body's going to go through this, but maybe on its own timeline, or within its own clock. And again, if you have a work schedule that maybe or even a practice schedule to where you work later, or you have to have later evenings, then your body will kind of adapt to this a little bit. Now, I mean, there are obviously ideal times that this could happen, right? But again, life gets in the way sometimes, so we have to be able to adjust and adapt. Um, but the big takeaway message here is especially during a time like this, with this isolation and the quarantine, is just the importance of sticking to a routine to make sure that our body can stay consistent and stay on track with these types of cycles as much as possible. All right, that more fluctuation, whether it's the bedtime or wake up time, it's just going to kind of throw all these into kind of a mixer, and just mix it, and just confuse our bodies a little bit. So again, right, just big takeaway message is just the importance of consistency with our daily routines, with our bedtimes, and making sure that our body kind of falls into that regular function. So we know what to expect. We know when our body is best adapt to perform certain tasks, and that we just raise awareness and recognition for that. right? And something else is, sometimes you might not be able to help it. Sometimes you have to work out in the mornings, just because, you have practicing afternoons, your work schedule, whatever it is, right? But just keep that in mind, is know that, all right, well, the AM might not be the most ideal time for these types of tasks. So taper your expectations. I'm not saying lower your expectations, but taper it. All right. Same as if you're going into a game and you've got muddy conditions. Don't expect to be running your fastest time. Okay. Just understand that the circumstances and the environment is going to adjust that, or going to impact that. Same thing here. If you have to work out in the afternoon, just understand that your your body might not be at its sharpest in terms of skill execution, or learning new tasks, new concepts. Not saying it's an excuse, all right? Any coaches out there, I'm not giving athletes an excuse to get out of something, or justify poor performance, right? It's, again, just like the weather, just like the opposition. It's something that's outside of our control that we just have to be aware of and be able to work through it. Maybe it means that in the afternoons and the evenings, we have to work that much harder to stay mentally focused and sharp on the task at hand. If it's in the morning, maybe we have to push a little bit harder to get the physical exertion and strength out of whatever the activity is. But again, if like I said, this is super helpful for me. Again, I can't take credit for creating it. Just like most other things, stole it from someone else, but do feel like, especially in the general concept of our 12 high performance habits, that this is key right here. And of course, more than happy to share it with anybody. Just send us a DM, send us a message, an email, and we'll be happy to share it and have a chat. But yeah, otherwise that's it for today's team huddle. Thanks for everybody that's tuning in, checking out, and we'll see you on Thursday. Stay safe.